Hey guys and girls, Bored now back with you on this video. I return to the Upside Down world and the 1980s and to Stranger Things. So this is going to be my review of Stranger Things 3 Chapter 8. It is called The Battle of Starcourt. It is of course the season finale, which sets us up very nicely for Stranger Things 4 coming tomorrow. So really good season finale. I remember really liking this. If this is like the best season finale or the weakest, I would say maybe season 2 is still my favourite season finale, but this probably would have a fight with the first season maybe. But point is, it really delivered, and the emotional stuff and the character stuff at the end really delivered. So we start off obviously in the mall with like the Hopper group. They're heading towards the mall because they've obviously heard over the radio that the Russians are coming for these kids, and Joyce obviously is convinced those are our kids and they're in danger, so they head towards the mall. And then you've got this big drama. It's a really intense opening to the episode because one of the little mind flare creatures actually gets inside her leg and is attacking her leg, and she's obviously all wounded. Jonathan takes some initiative, which I like, so he has the idea to like literally cut it out of her, and it gets really graphic and squirmy. You get quite a bit of like gore and blood in this scene, and they obviously do the whole wooden stick thing, her biting down on it and him trying to get it out of her. In the end, she does it herself. She uses some powers and gets it out of hers. But I obviously like the sort of end to like that cold open, because you get the thing like squirming away like we've seen them do this season, and a foot comes down on it, and of course it's Hopper's foot. He's back in the mall now, so these groups are like joining together. You get some like big, obviously emotional like reuniting, a bit like we did last episode with the two groups coming together. It might have been the episode before, but we get a really nice father-daughter moment with Al and Hopper, and obviously it's been a really satisfying thing which has brought them back together, and them kind of Hopper especially being apologetic for the way he behaved at times earlier in the season. So it's really nice, and it obviously does a good job in setting up some of the stuff we're going to see with them later in the episode. There's some good interactions once again as they like decide, they come up with a plan to like ultimately defeat the Mind Flare. I actually like some of the stuff with Erica and with Murray. I like because he's trying to lay down the law to her, and because they're obviously like Erica and Dustin and that group, they're sort of telling like them about what they saw inside this Russian like base, and Murray's trying to dismiss it. He's like, oh, are you crazy? And like Erica's calling him like a bald-headed like old or arsehole, and she says, I spent all this time down that shithole. I know what I'm talking about. So that's like really funny. But they obviously hatch this plan where they decide that now Al's gonna try and get away, that they're gonna like drive her to the cabin, and then they need like the Dustin, Steve, Robin group to drive and go to the hill, like that big hill we saw like in the opening episode, because they need Dustin's transmitter, like a bigger signal, so they can all communicate between each other. And then the Joyce, Hopper and Murray group have this idea of obviously going to the place and shutting down the generator, basically getting inside. They go undercover. You've got like them in like the Russian uniforms, which is really amusing to see, and there's some great comedy with them pretending to be Russians. There's like a funny scene with Hopper where they come up in the lift and they obviously get caught, and they're questioning who they are, and this is before they've put the uniforms on, because they take the uniforms off those guys, and they start questioning, and Murray tries to talk himself, try and talk them out of it, because he obviously speaks Russian, so he sort of pretends, and they're like, oh, comrades, we're part of the group, we were called by such and such, and it's clearly not working, so Hopper has to go full-blown Hopper and just kind of, I think he literally shoots them, because he's got that massive like machine gun or shotgun, whatever it is, so he shoots them, and there's like this reaction, Joyce says, well, what are you doing? And he's like, new plan, so they sort of have to change the plan, and they obviously, they dress up and get inside, and at the same time, obviously, like there's another group that are gonna like fight the mind flare, but only once they've shut off the thing. But so it's this calculated thing, but obviously there's certain hurdles. One of the hurdles is then, as like the Nazi group are trying to escape, of course, like Billy Boy is waiting in the car, and he's like cut off the power to the car. Like they see then the oil like wire has been like dismantled, and like what the hell's going on? And they look across, and Billy's waiting in the car. It's a good visual because he's staring ahead, and he's got like the flashlights on, well, not the headlights, and he just drives towards them, and particularly Nancy, and we get like one of these great Nancy badass type moments that we sort of need to see more, I think, but she sort of does come alive when she goes a bit Sarah Connor in those scenes, where, because she just grabs the gun and she's got this look of determination in her face, and she just shoots off all these rounds, and I think in the end she runs out of bullets, or she like realises it's not working, and he's getting closer, but Steve of all people comes to her rescue, so there's something quite poetic about that. I also like then it's Steve who comes and he knocks Billy off the road, basically, because he's driving the car. Because if you remember back to season 2, you had that really hard hitting scene where Billy kind of knocked him around a little bit. Now, admittedly, it's not as bad as some of the beating Steve has had in this show, but it was pretty bad. So it's actually quite a cool callback and payoff to that. But yeah, I like this stuff with Steve. It's good character stuff, because as soon as he hears then that group are in trouble, and yeah, they could be in danger, he immediately, because he's up on the hill with Dustin and Erica, and Robin's like, no, I've got to go and save them, they need me. And Robin, of course, comes with him, which is cool. But it's definitely like this heroicism of Steve is really great to see, and it's a great sort of character stuff for him. Shows how far and he's come, and how attached he is to this group. Then he does sort of save the day, and obviously complicates things for himself. Obviously, Dustin and Erica stay on the hill. And I mean, just speaking of the Billy stuff and the Mind Flare stuff, because that stuff gets really scary, really graphic and grueling, because at one point, because the target is obviously Al, and Al isn't like, they're not successful in getting away for obvious reasons. So Billy like chases down Al, Mike and Lucas. I think it's those three. They're all in, or it might be Max actually, but I know there's a group of them. There's at least 3 of them, and he chases them down like a hallway, and obviously under the control of the thing, he just takes no prisoner. Like, he literally like smacks them. Like, he knocks Mike down, he knocks whoever the other one was down. It was either Lucas or Max, I can't remember. And he like grabs Al and drags her across, and he's gonna sacrifice her to this big thing we see, and it's almost like a big tower with all these legs. There's like 6 or 8 legs or something. It looks really good. I think generally the creature design in Stranger Things has been very good, even as we've expanded things the last 2 seasons. There's 1 or 2 effects which maybe haven't held up so well, but generally I think they do a good job with this stuff. And I really like the creature effect of this and the visual of it, like homing down on them. So Al's obviously in trouble, like she's going to be sacrificed, and it's really cool, really effective the way she turns things around and actually gets through to Billy, because of course he's under the furor of this thing, and it's because it goes back to like a previous episode in the past with his mother, which they said was the key to him being controlled in the first place. So Elle once again goes into his mind, and she finds the answers. She finds like some of the important details of that day on the beach, like what the mother was wearing. There's something I think to do with like the sport they were playing, or how many such and such. I can't remember the exact detail, but that's the gist of the scene. Then these important details, and it sort of is this key to get him through to Billy and reminding him. And yeah, I do like the whole thing than it's to do with his past, because it is a way to give you a bit more of an insight into Billy and maybe what makes him tick, or then there is some emotional like depth to him. But it is really perfect, and then she uses this, and it's the way she like breaks him out of his trance. And yeah, it's such a profound moment, I think, because he obviously, once he's out of the trance and he sees them, because also Max is like nearby, so he knows that she could be in danger as well, but he does, put himself in front of Al, and he fights the thing off, but obviously ultimately he can't beat it, and Billy is sacrificed, and the whole reaction from Max is really devastating and beautiful. And I know there's been some question marks over like, would she get this emotional, and I know Rachel has had problems with that, and it really doesn't bother me. I think it does make sense that someone of this age would be this affected by something like this, and at the end of the day these characters did grow up together, no matter the nature of their relationship, no matter how much of a terrible person Billy has been at times. The fact is they did grow up together, so you do have some sort of form of a bond with someone you've spent this much time with. So, and I think just anyway to witness that, I think even if it was a regular person, you would be traumatized up to a point, let alone someone you actually know and is sort of technically like a blood relative. But the point is, it works in the scene, and I love the fallout from it. I love when Max gets really emotional, good acting by Sadie Sink. Then Al comes to her side, and she's there, and she hugs her, she says it's all right, and because I think a moment like that really confirms that like Al and Max are friends. It's not just some sort of a phase, that they're true friends. They're not just friends who go shopping and have a laugh together. They're friends who are there for each other at the most difficult times in their life, and it sort of does confirm that Max is definitely part of the group now, and they have the bond. So I like that stuff with Al being the first to come and support her and be there for her emotionally. And so much of what this episode is about that group bond, and about friends and family, and just stuff like that. And obviously I have to mention so much fun, the whole Susie stuff and never ending story, that whole thing. It's just so it made me crack up, and it's obviously in the middle of like Steve and Robin being chased in a car by a mind flare, and all this is going down. But it turns out because Murray, who thinks he's got the right code for Hopper and Joyce to get in and turn the key, he actually doesn't have the right code. So, and they work out that it's this equation, which Dustin kind of thinks he should know, but he's not quite sure. And it's obviously the perfect excuse for him to call his girlfriend Susie, who he's been talking about all season, and who no one believed existed all season. And what makes the scene so perfect is then they're all listening in on their various like radios, and obviously Steve's one of the first ones to respond. So it's like, is that Susie? And you've obviously got the whole Dusty Burns Susie Pooh thing, which I'm sure I mean, he's teased about later in the episode, Dustin is, so it's like, yeah, you're never going to live that one. Like, Max and Lucas are, like, teasing him later in the episode, so they obviously have to go through the whole never-ending story thing, which is glorious, and I'm sure has, like, led to so many internet videos, YouTube videos, but so entertaining, so delightful, and I think what adds to it is that they are all listening in and their various reactions. I really like Murray's reaction, actually. Like, he's really funny because he's clutching his face, and it's like, his face is just like, what the fuck is this shit? We're in the middle of what feels like a war. What could be the end of the world? What is this? But obviously the whole thing is, Susie mentions that you haven't called me in a week, and obviously Dustin does the whole thing of, hey, we're fighting Russians here, we're trying to save the world, and I don't think she totally buys that, but she uses it against him where she's like, okay, so you call me after a week saying you're fighting the Russians, you're trying to save the world, you need this equation, which I think really you should know. So, and those are conditions, and they have to sing the song, they have to sing it together, and it's also perfect. She's very likable and goofy and cute. It's Susie, and her putting her fist in the air at the important sort of big chorus of the song, like the character in the film, is just so perfect. They never miss a trick in this show, which is so great. But yeah, everybody's reactions, Erica's reaction, because she's standing next to Dustin, is so perfect as well. Just her giving the classic Erica eye roll, and later on when they've obviously done the thing and they've got the code, and Dusty and Susie are still making sweet talking to each other, Eric's like, okay, that's enough, and I think tears the walkie-talkie out of his hand. So it's so great. It's like a landmark moment in this really dramatic episode, but obviously awesome stuff, and we get the Hopper sacrifice, which at the time appeared to be the end of his character, where he obviously has to defeat Terminator guy. They get into a fight one more time, and he beats him, but he goes into the thing, which means he's sort of blocking the generator, so Hopper has to stay there, and he has to, clear the path for them then to turn the key in the other room. But because all this energy is coming out, it means Hopper has to stay in the room, and it means, once they turn the key, then he's gonna be killed. He's there. There's no other way to do it. So it sort of makes up the scene earlier with Al, and the scene at the end with Al, even more poignant and emotional, because obviously we cut to 3 months later, and first of all, as Rachel has said, it's really cool, and Joyce has decided, yeah, we're moving, we're starting afresh, that being the Byers family, her, Jonathan, Will, and now Al, because she's adopted Al because of obviously losing Hopper, which makes a lot of sense anyway. That's so perfect, and it could lead to some good scenes with Will and Al next season, but they decide to uproot and start a new life in California, which means obviously next season we're probably going to have 3 different locations, including Russia, because the credit sequence in this, a little hint, then they're still up to this shenanigans in Russia, because we see a new American fed to a mind flare type creature. So 3 locations I think next season, but it definitely makes a lot of sense. And I think them leaving, Hawkins was first mentioned in season 2. I'm sure it was Bob who actually suggested it to Joyce at that time, so you could almost see it as a little tribute to Bob, her decision to actually do it. But it doesn't make sense after what they've been through over 3 years. Then they might actually decide, yeah, it's probably time for a fresh change. And like this whole sequence at the end, like all the emotional goodbyes. You obviously get Robin and Steve like applying for like the video store job, which is so funny because like the sort of nerdy arcade guy from season 2 is like running it seems, and doing like the interview, and Steve Harrington just being the goofy nerd. Steve Harrington is so great to watch, like him like just falling about and hitting a Phoebe Cates poster, like one of those cardboard stand-up things, is so gloriously what we love about Steve Harrington. And obviously it's on point because of the Phoebe Cates reference from Dustin previously in the season. So, but yeah, they apply for jobs, and at first the guy is obviously impressed with Robin because she's really cool and up on her movies, and actually, you know, names some like more art house style movies. So like, he's instantly more impressed with her, whereas Steve, he goes through like the more typical mainstream option. Like he kind of says Star Wars, and the guy asks him which one, and he said, oh, the one with like the cuddly bears, and of course that's Return of the Jedi, the weakest film of the original trilogy. So that's really, and he's saying other stuff. I can't remember exactly the 3 he picked, but like more mainstream sort of type films that you would question. But I do actually have a theory that with the next season being set in 1986, and you've now got these two in a video store, you could have like a Howard the Duck type thing where Steve maybe has a bit of a fondness for that. It just feels like the sort of like trashy, like mainstream film he might sort of go for, but we'll see. But Robin talks the guy into hiring them both because he says, she said, sorry, when Steve worked at the ice cream parlour, there were so many girls there because he's just a chick magnet, and she sort of puts it to this guy, then if you've got all these girls around, he obviously can't spend time with all of them, so there's going to be free chicks for you, basically, to like get with. So that's the way she puts it. But it's obviously going to be great, assuming they pick this up next season and you have Steve and Robin continuing their charming friendship in this video store. I can see some great scenes in the video store next season. Fingers crossed for that stuff, but that's really good. And obviously a lot of the other stuff is like the typical friends and cast saying goodbye to the buyers, and you obviously get that beautiful letter which Elle reads from Hopper, and obviously the way that scene done is so great because she's reading it in the present, but you see him actually sit down to write it in the past, and the fact that he's having like diversions writing it and scribbles things out or says, wait a minute, that's not quite right, because that does feel pretty authentic. That's sort of the experience if you're like writing an important letter or whatever it is, that you kind of want to get like the phrasing right. So people do have like sort of diversions like that. So, but what he says in the letter is just so moving about how Al changed his life, how she was really important to his life, and how she did become like family to him after the loss of his daughter. But he also says all this stuff about how, you know, when you're young, you go through changes, people come into life, but also there will be times where things that have become familiar to you will suddenly change, and you'll be forced to like move on with your life and you know, start a new chapter, and it can seem really difficult, but you will get through it. And I think what he says just sums up a lot to do with the show and the characters and what it's about, sort of thing, and what it could be about next season, because obviously next season it does seem they are moving in a bit of a different direction. As I said, you're probably going to have 3 different locations, but anyway, the point is, it's such a poignant, beautiful moment. And even though we now know that Hopper is coming back for season 4, it doesn't take away from this moment. This moment still lands. It's such a beautiful, heartfelt moment. And yeah, just the perfect way for them to be leaving. And obviously for this new chapter, Jonathan and Nancy kind of have an emotional moment. They're obviously intending to carry on their relationship long distance, so that'll be interesting to see what happens with that next season, and be interesting to see what they do with Jonathan, because they sort of need to do something. But whatever the case, this finale really lands. It's a really strong finale, and like the emotional stuff really hits, as does like, you know, the big dramatic sci-fi horror type scenes. So good character stuff, and pretty much has everything. Again, it's debatable if it is like the best or maybe the weakest finale. You can always have that debate, but it's a very good finale anyway, in my opinion, and it really sticks the landing, and it sort of confirms that for me this is the best season of the show because of the character growth, because of the development, and just some of the themes and what it's explored with like 1980s culture. And obviously a lot of like the body horror stuff has really spoken to me. I've said this before, and I think it is impressive how dark it's been, and how scary some of the scenes have been for such a mainstream show. And you can always debate, have they gone too far with some of that? Maybe on the odd occasion, but I also find those scenes as a horror fan very satisfying to watch as well. But it's been a great season anyway. I think for me personally, this is my favourite season of the show, which is, yeah, definitely saying something. And I'm really pumped for season 4 to see what they do next. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below of this episode, and what you think is going to happen maybe in season 4, what you're looking forward to seeing next season. And me and Rachel will be back soon with the first couple of reviews for Stranger Things 4. Like and subscribe as always. Share me out on social media, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.